The movie set in a dystopian world where the sun never rises and it always dark. A strange occurrence happens at exactly 12 o'clock every night. As everyone in this world dies for 5 minutes and wakes up with no memory of what happened. At the start of the movie, the protagonist, John Murdoch, awakens in a dark bathroom and terrified. He has no recollection of how he got there, what he was doing in the past weeks, or even his name. After getting dressed, he snoops around the place until he comes across a briefcase with the initials KH on it. Upon opening it, he finds a greeting card from a place known as Shell Beach. Murdoch can't exactly recall the place, but he starts getting fragments of memory about it. Just then, the telephone inside the bathroom starts ringing and he picks it up hesitantly. On the other side, a man who calls himself Dr. Scrubber tells Murdoch that his memory was erased because of a failed experiment and now some men are looking for him. This adds to the confusion that Murdoch is already experiencing, and before the doctor can say anything else, he hangs up. Following this, Murdoch proceeds to check out of the place, which turns out to be a hotel. As he is leaving, he comes across the lady's disfigured corpse. Seeing this, Murdoch gets terrified and rushes out of his room and sees 3 abnormally tall and pale-faced individuals approaching him. When he reaches the lobby, he notices that everyone is asleep, even a woman inside the elevator. It's almost as if they have become lifeless. Just then, the clock strikes 12 o'clock and all the people come back to life again. Murdoch finds it very strange and he leaves the hotel immediately. Shortly after, the mysterious men approach the hotel receptionist and ask him about Murdoch. When he fails to give an answer, they inject him with a strange substance and kill him. Elsewhere, a stage performer named Emma is contacted by Dr. Scrubber, who tells her to meet urgently. Here, we get to know that Emma is none other than Murdoch's wife. When the two meet, Dr. Scrubber mentioned that Murdoch's memory has been totally wiped out and some bad people are on the hunt of him. Hence, he asks her to contact him immediately if she meets Murdoch. Although confused, Emma agrees. In the next scene, local police along with Inspector Bumstead arrives at the crime scene in the hotel and start investigating. Turns out that it has been the 6th murder case in the last month, and all of them have the same spiral symbol on them. Since Murdoch had been staying there, Inspector Bumstead immediately suspects him of the crime. He then calls Emma to the police station and warns her to turn her husband in as he is an wanted criminal. Meanwhile, Murdoch is wandering around the city, confused and scared. As he reaches a place, he feels uneasy and notices that his fingerprints are glowing. After a while, he finds himself in front of a Shell Beach advertisement board, the same one on the greeting card, which he finds in the hotel suitcase. Curious, he climbs up the advertisement board, but suddenly, he is confronted by the 3 tall men from earlier, who call themselves the Strangers. One of them tries to use his power on Murdoch to make him sleep, but it fails. This shocks the Strangers, but before they can comprehend anything, Murdoch uses his telekinesis powers and subdues the 3. Later, we are taken to the hideout of the Strangers, which turns out to be a large underground compound. Everyone is in shock that Murdoch possesses telekinetic powers like they do. Here we get to know that Murdoch was part of an experiment called imprinting, but he somehow escaped by using his powers. Now he has become a wanted man for the Strangers. On the other hand, Emma returns home from the police station and finds Murdoch waiting for her. Although he doesn't seem to remember her, he knows that he lives there, as the address was mentioned in his business card. Emma tries to ask Murdoch about where he was for the last 3 weeks, but the latter has no answer to it. Instead, he says that he didn't even know his name until he checked his wallet. As the two talk, Emma reveals that he has been suspected for the murder of 6 women. This shocks Murdoch, and he leaves the place immediately. Just before midnight, the strange men gather in their hideout for a meeting. Dr. Scrubber is the only human among the attendees, and it appears that he is the head of their science department. When the clock strikes exactly 12 p.m., the leader of the strangers, Mr. Book, emerges from the crowd and instructs everyone to shut it down. As soon as he says this, the strangers go into a meditation state and the entire city above stops. People go to sleep regardless of where they are, the trains come to a halt, and even the entire traffic stops. Only Morak is unaffected by the strange process, and he wanders around the city in disbelief. He tries to wake some people up, but to no avail. Meanwhile, large buildings and other infrastructures begin rising through the underground, indicating that a massive change is taking place in the city. Then the strangers, along with Dr. Scrubber, head to the city and begin a process called tuning. In this process, they approach several individuals in the city and inject them with a syringe so that their memory is wiped off. After 5 minutes, when all the strangers have retreated to the underground, the city again comes back to life and everyone wakes up. However, this time they have no recollection of their past life and have a completely new identity. For instance, if someone was a doctor 5 minutes ago, they may have become a serial killer now. After the tuning, the strangers again shift their focus towards Modak, since it is proving difficult to catch him. So Dr. Scrubber has prepared a syringe which has all the subconscious memories of Modak stored in it. Now all he has to do is inject it to someone and they will be able to track Modak instantly. As everyone stares at him in confusion, one of the senior strangers, Mr. Hand, emerges from the crowd and agrees to volunteer. The leader, Mr. Book, gives the heads up and soon Mr. Hand is injected with a strange liquid. After convulsion for a while, he finally wakes up with all the memories of Modak. In the next scene, Modak reaches the subway in search of Shell Beach. He asks someone about direction to the place, but surprisingly all of them have forgotten about it. Confused, he once again stares at the greeting card and finds the name Carl Harris written on it. The initials of the same name were inscribed on the suitcase at the hotel. Later, Modak tracks down Carl's address and visits his home. The old man reminisces about the past where Modak was a kid, but as expected, he doesn't remember any of it. Just then, he gets curious and asks Carl why it's always night, but the latter simply tells him to take rest. After Modak goes to another room, Carl secretly calls Emma and informs her about Modak's arrival. She in turn tells Inspector Bumstead and proceeds to the location with him, but sadly, Mr. Hand, who has been tracking Emma using Modak's memories, overhears her entire conversation. When Modak finds out that Carl has revealed his location, he tries to escape the place. But it's too late. The strangers led by Mr. Hand have already arrived outside and they start attacking Modak. However, using his extremely complex telekinetic powers and the will to survive, Modak keep on evading them. He somehow manages to get on the streets, but he is once again surrounded by the strangers. Just as he is about to be apprehended, Emma and the inspector arrive in their car and take him away. The scene then cuts to the police station where Inspector Bumstead is interrogating Modak, as he still believes that he is behind the murders. However, an agitated Modak flips the questions and instead asks the inspector if he remembers the way to Shell Beach. As expected, Bumstead knows the place, but he can't seem to recall the directions. Then Modak asks him why they are always experiencing night and why they have no memories of the day. He even makes a book levitate to prove his point that they are dealing with something supernatural. After a while, some strangers led by Mr. Hand enters the police station and starts looking for Modak. They put all the officers to sleep and head to the cell. However, on reaching there, they find that their target has already escaped. In the meantime, Modak confronts Dr. Scrubber at a bathhouse and demands answers. He wants to know what is going on in the city and why the strangers are after him. The doctor calms him down and reveals that they are all part of a grand experiment that the strangers are conducting. Just then, Inspector Bumstead arrives at the scene and takes control of the doctor. Here, it is revealed that the inspector himself released Modak out of custody, as he too wants to find answers. After that, the inspector and Modak force the doctor to lead them to Shell Beach. They get in a car and start their journey, but for some reason, the doctor keeps mentioning that going there is of no use. Shortly after, they reach a dead end as a bridge has mysteriously disappeared. Hence, the three decide to continue on a boat. During the journey, Dr. Scrubber finally explains everything that is happening with the city. He reveals that the strangers are aliens from another planet, and they came to Earth after they almost faced extinction. When they saw the human population prospering, they immediately decided to emulate them. However, the problem was that they didn't have any souls, and that is what differentiates them from the humans. Adamant on saving their race, the strangers then created an entire city, abducted humans from different parts of the world, and placed them there. Every night at 12, they stop everyone and install new memories in them, so that they can compare the different characteristics in humans. The plan is to know everything about the human soul and become like them. Dr. Scrubber further mentions that he is the best psychologist in town, and this is why the strangers don't erase his memory every night. Modak then asks why it's always night, to which the doctor replies that the strangers are afraid of light, so they created a city where it's always dark. After a while, they arrive at Shell Beach and finds that it's merely a poster on a wall. Enraged, Modak and Inspector Bumstead grab some iron bars and begin striking the wall. The doctor begs the DO to stop, but they don't listen. Eventually, they break the wall and get taken aback to find endless space on the other side. This concludes that the city is a mere experiment and there is no escaping it. Just then, Mr. Hand and his henchmen arrives at the scene with a captive Emma and threaten Modak to surrender. The inspector immediately retaliates, but he is thrown out into the space. Before he dies, he witnesses the city floating in space, which is surrounded by nothing but darkness. Here we get to know that the city is just a huge spaceship. On the other hand, Mr. Hand uses Emma as leverage and eventually captures Modak. In the next scene, Modak is seen tied to the chair as the entire stranger community shouts for his death. However, the leader Mr. Book claims that he has other ideas. He summons Dr. Scrubber and asks him to inject Modak with an imprint, which will transfer his soul into all the strangers. Hesitantly, the doctor obliges, but instead of the imprint, he injects Modak with another syringe, which contains all his memories. As soon as it is administered, all of Modak's memories flashes right in front of his eyes, and it is shown that he was indeed born in a place called Shell Beach. Because of the memories, he not understands the true nature of his power and becomes much stronger. In one of the memories, Dr. Scrubber appears and tells Modak to defeat the strangers and take control over the city. With this, he gets renewed hope and breaks free from his bondage. He then starts using his telekinetic powers to throw the strangers around until Mr. Book approaches him. Soon the two starts going to hammer and tongs at each other, but they seem to be equally matched. Their fight destroys the entire compound, so they continue in the air. This time, Modak reigns supreme when he deflects Mr. Book's knife and throws it right back at him, finally killing him. After the victory, Modak approaches the doctor and asks him about Emma, but the latter mentions that she has already lost her memory in the last tuning. Hearing this, Modak is devastated, but he has an idea to change everything. In the last scene, Murdoch uses his supreme telekinetic power to reform the whole city. He adds an ocean all around, repairs the bridges, creates a shell beach, and most importantly, brings the sun back by rotating the spaceship. The movie ends as Murdoch heads to a pier near the ocean, where a nearly transformed Emma is basking in the sun.